It doesn't take anyone long to drive through our neighborhoods and see the impact of our criminal justice system. Let me just say it right off the bat. I believe in criminal justice. I'm a criminal justice major from years and years ago, but I'm also a social justice theologian. I also believe in look at and examine systems. Our criminal justice system in Louisiana is not broken. What I mean by that, the system is getting exactly what it was designed to do. The system works. What I believe, though, is we have the wrong system. It doesn't take you long to understand what's going on here in Louisiana when you put in and bring in the selling away of our prisons, how they also look at and combine education with it. If you privatize education and you privatize the system of prison and corrections, you're selling away our whole way of life. The two work hand in hand. I was just sharing earlier, the correction system uses the grade scores of kids 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade to project how many beds they're going to need in prisons down the road. So they correlate all together. Also, it doesn't take you long to drive through any of our African American communities and see the devastating impact, long and short term, of our prison systems. Do we need a better prison system? Yes. Do we need a better justice system? Yes. But let me ask you this. How many of you know that if you are arrested, convicted, and decide to go to court, you lose in court and you're sentenced? The mere fact that you use your constitutional right to a trial, when they do your sentencing, there's a checklist that our legislators have put in place that because you use your constitutional right to go to court, that is a mark against you and your sentence is lengthened because you used your right. The judges in Louisiana have no way to get beyond that. It's on the first part of the checklist. And it's listed under failure to take responsibility. Well, excuse me for using my constitutional rights to trial. Also, the expansion of our prison population in the last 30 years is not because of violent crime. We see that in the media portrays that, of murders. Yes, they happen. Yes, justice needs to take place, but let's deal with the facts. Federal Department of Corrections and Department of Justice have said that only 0.4% of the prison growth since 1980 is due to violent crimes. 68% plus comes out of from 1980s and beyond for the war, so-called quote-unquote war on drugs from President Reagan. However, I am still not convinced that little Johnny or Sister Sue on the street corner who stopped with a nickel bag or a dime bag of marijuana, who's sentenced and given 10 to 15 years, I'm still not convinced they're the ones who are supplying our community with the drugs. If we're gonna have a war on drugs, let's get to the supplier. Let's get to those who are paying in political action campaigns. Let's get to those who are supplying the United States all the way around. We don't have a war on drugs. We have a war on the communities. I believe we have a war on the lower income and uneducated class within our system, in our society. That's the war we have. You can look at any prison population, take here, right here in Baton Rouge. 83% plus of those who are inmates at LCIW, Elon, Dixon, all the way around, are African American and Hispanic men. Most of them, my stats might be off, plus or minus 3%. 69% are for first-time drug use, not violent crimes. Just 2 weeks ago, the East Baton Rouge Parish Jail runs at a capacity of 1,600. On a daily basis, they are transferring out 50 to 75 people every single day. 2 weeks ago, they wrote a check, 6 figures, transferring out to another jail within Louisiana because they didn't have enough to house them. If we sell our prisons, tell me where that money is going to go. There's enough money right now of $100,000 and just one transfer that's going on several times throughout a month. There's enough money there to build adequate correctional systems and have an overhaul of our justice system. Louisiana has the highest and the harshest sentencing laws of any place in the country. Check this out. Through the Byrne Grant, initially set up by President Reagan, kept going by President Clinton, kept going by President Bush, both of them. President Obama, under the Economic Recovery Act, 2009, gave $2 billion again to the burn grant, as well as an additional $600 million tied into the number of arrests. What I mean by that is, in the burn grant, let's say, what's your name? Patricia. Over the Mardi Gras time, you had friends over at your house. And your neighbor doesn't like you and calls up and says, hey, I think they got a party over there and they have drugs there. Under the burn grant and the legislation that goes with that, the police can come to your house, use battering rams, take everybody in your house off, confiscate your cars, your furniture, your money, anything they find no drugs in your house, release you 3 days later. Guess what? You do not get your stuff back until you provide an attorney that you pay for to go fight to get your stuff back. It can be confiscated under the Burn Grant Act, under the quote-unquote war on drugs, but they found nothing in your house. Now, if you want to get your stuff back before that, you can cop a plea and say, okay, yes, I had it, so I want my stuff back. Well, now you have a mark that goes with you for the rest of your life. One of the things that I've noticed in doing reentry work, you can leave the grounds of Angola or the state prison or Dixon or East Baton Rouge. You can leave the grounds, but the bars that you were behind stay with you for the rest of your life. We know right now federally 70% of the recidivism rate is not for new crimes. 70% of the men and women going back are not for new crimes. They're going back for technicalities. They could not pay their probation and parole fee. They didn't have a job. They missed an appointment, so they go back. At a rate of $35.31 per day that gets paid for you, you're worth more behind bars than you're out on the streets. We pay less than that to educate our folks. Tell me the two don't go together. Louisiana is not an offender-friendly worker place. One of the main criteria for you coming out on probation parole is you have to get a job. But if you do not have employers who are willing to hire the number that we're putting in, guess what? They're going to go right back. It becomes a revolving door, and it becomes very easy to meet the mandate of the contract of a 90% plus occupancy rate for the prisons. GEO, which was formerly Wackenhut, has had their day in Louisiana. They had the juvenile facility. Louisiana gave it to them, and it didn't take but 2 years or less, and Louisiana had to go back in and take it away from them, and was still dealing with lawsuits because of the harsh treatment. All they did was change their name from Wackenhut to GEO, and they're coming right back in again. Now, if you've done me wrong once and I've had to pay the penalty and the price and clean up your mess, why would I want to give you a whole nother contract? Excuse me, but that doesn't take rocket science to figure out. Our United Methodist Church, 3 months ago, we found out through some advocacy work that our Board of Pensions had $1 million plus invested in a fund. In that fund was CCA and GEO, Corrections Corporation of America and GEO. We were able through acts to get our Board of Pensions to divest their funds from that. We pulled $1 million plus out. Folks, if you have retirement funds, mutual funds, IRAs, go in and begin to check and see the companies, ask the questions of what companies do these funds support. If they support CCA or GEO, say, look, change mine to one that does not have them in it. That is your right as the owner of that IRA mutual fund. Check your retirements. The racial disparity, there is no way to explain away the racial disparity in the number of arrests. In the book, The New Jim Crow, Attorney Michelle Alexander says that it is a known fact by the Department of Corrections and the Department of Justice that Anglo-Americans use more drugs more frequently than African-Americans or Hispanics. That's a known fact from the Department of Justice, Department of Corrections. However, it's the African-American men, mainly, who are arrested at a more frequent rate and given harsher sentences. The long-term implications are you've taken the men away, you've taken a workforce away who could be paying taxes, taking care of their families, and so forth and so forth, but they go inside, and now what you have is a brand new slave labor inside the prisons. Angola, we know, has for years had a phenomenal prison money-making machine. Now, if CCA or GEO take over, all of those funds go to them. And if I remember, and somebody here is probably smarter than I am, those are not Louisiana companies, which means the tax dollars that they could be paying are going away with them also. Also, when they become private prisons, we have no accountability to how they run their prisons as far as how they run their business. They don't have to keep Louisiana employees. They can bring their own folks in. So Louisiana not only is giving them a free prison, not only keeping them 95% full, not only are we going to have to pay them $35.31 per day for every prison they have in there, plus other fees, we'll also have to pay unemployment benefits and health benefits for all the workers that they let go. They have a track pattern from other states of doing just that. They come in and they cut the staff down from where it used to be 3 to 5 guards, and they'll cut it down to 1 or 2. To the bare bones minimum. That is their track pattern. They are not in the business of rehabilitation. They are in the business of prison and keeping you incarcerated, because that's how they make their money. Follow them on their New York Stock Exchange. They're all traded. Both companies are traded. They are the number 2. There are other little small companies. GEO just bought out Connelly, which was another company about 2 years ago. They're there. Their business is about making money. Money on the backs of your friends, your neighbors, our daughters, our sons, our fellow Louisianans. That's where they make their money from. But we can change that. 2001, Louisiana had a moratorium put on this from the legislature. It's brought up again. They're going back through it again. But we can change that. The perception again, violent criminals do not bring the increase that's happening in our prison explosion. It's the war on drugs. Ron West talked about the financial impact, but how many of you would love to have a business, buy a business, pay it over 20 years, end up with $0, and know that your customers are going to be there at 90% occupancy? How many would you take a business like that? Does that make good business sense? No, not if you're selling a business. That's exactly what's on the table that our legislators are asked to do. And I just believe that we have smarter legislators than that, and to fall for that game. The last thing is, besides the maintenance of the buildings, the employee benefits, retirement plans, health care, all those things still have to be taken care of by who? You and I, our tax dollars. The biggest thing that we're having to deal with right now when we do reentry work is when an individual comes out from behind bars, is the life that they're having to live. It's always a life that they're stigmatized. There are many, many groups who are trying to work on reentry issues. But if what goes down the pike and what gets voted on is there is no plan for rehabilitation inside. CCA and GEO do not have to do it. It's their own private business. Right now we have at least some rehabilitation that's taking place, some reentry work that's taking place in our parish, not the parish jail, but our state prisons. Angola, Dixon, Elaine Hunt, and LCIW. They do a good job of providing the resources and the opportunities. Along with working with Capital Area Technical College, they do reentry. They can get Pell Grants, get skills, be retrained. However, it doesn't help you good to be retrained, get a skill, if the employer is not going to hire you. So what we're trying to do now is begin to create micro-enterprise development to help those individuals go into business for themselves. When they do that, they're going to need people like you, people like me, people like your friends to be their customers, to help them out, so that they can then live the lives that we all love to live. They have that same capability of doing those lives. The men and women that are there, it could be you or me tomorrow who's sitting behind bars. All it takes is one phone call. All it takes is one thing to change your life forever. And I'll close with this. 3 years ago, I went home from my grandmother's funeral. I'm from the mountains of North Carolina, a 75-mile drive from the airport to our hometown. My cousin comes to pick me up. We pull into the driveway's kind of slanted. I felt something hit the back of my foot, and I reached down. It was a 9mm pistol. I'm on the phone 15 minutes later with the chief of police, who's a good friend of mine. We went to high school together. We're set to do breakfast the next morning. Remember, my hands are on this 9mm pistol, my fingerprints. He gets a beep. The cousin that dropped me off at home, my hands on a 9mm pistol, has just taken that same pistol, killed a man in a drug deal. Folks, had I not been on the phone with the chief of police when this went down, it could have been me trying to defend myself, an out-of-towner, somebody killed, drug deal, my hands are on the pistol. That was my wake-up call to how easy I could go from looking at the trees, enjoying the weather, having my free life, to where I'm told what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, and marked for the rest of my life. It can happen that easy. So what do? We organize. What do? We educate. What do? We mobilize. We do it to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Connelly.